Okay, just like your work
It works really well. I can put it in my first person.
Howdy. Okay. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. On page of lesson 79 in the workbook. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. So I'm going to mess with your head today.
All right.
Okay? I'm going to just force a miracle mess with your head a little bit today. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to welcome it. Some of it's going to be hard to believe. But if you use it, you'll see that it works. Okay? So I want you to think about a problem that you think you have. Now don't say you can't think of it. That's a bunch of crap people do. When you say think about a problem, the man goes, what problem? They just forget they took the noose off so they could come over here and have a class. So all of a sudden, no problems, me. Anyway, you don't feel complete peace. All right? So today we're going to cover your problem. We're going to solve your problem. We're going to show you how to deal with your problem. Is that cool? And you can apply this to everything. Okay, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let you recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let you recognize the problem so it can be solved. Now, number one, a problem can't be solved if you don't know what it is. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't solve the problem. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't solve the problem. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't solve the problem. So conversely, if you haven't been able to solve your problem, you don't know what it is. I'll say that one more time. If you think you got a money problem, then and you haven't been able to solve it, then you don't know what your money problem is. If you got a relationship problem and you've been dealing with it forever and you haven't been able to solve it, then say, I don't really know what my relationship problem is. Because if you knew what the problem was, it would be solved. Then he says, now even if the problem is already solved, you will still have the problem. Even if the problem's been solved, you will still have the problem because you won't even recognize that the problem has been solved. Because if you don't know what the problem is, how can you tell when it's been solved? So all of your problems could be solved right now, but you don't even know it because you don't even know what the problem is. How do I know I don't know what the problem is? I still think I have the problem. So wherever you think you have the problem, that's where you don't know what the problem is, Earl. Okay, so let's get clear. I'll say this again because I need to remember it. If you're sitting up here right now and you think you have a problem that you haven't been able to solve, according to the Course in Miracles, you don't know what your problem really is. What you think the problem is isn't what the problem is. Money problems aren't solved by money. Career problems aren't solved by getting the job. Relationship problems are not solved by just getting another person. Okay? The level that you created on is not the level you solve it on. So let me get this straight. If I have a problem, I won't be able to solve it if I don't know what it is. If the problem has already been solved, I'll still have the problem because I don't know what the problem is. This is the situation of the world. If you want to know what the situation of the world is, the problem of separation, is really the only problem. The problem of separation is the only problem. The problem of separation, I'm going to say this about a couple of minutes because this is the hardest thought to get. So I'm going to say it over and over again. Your sense of being separate from God is your only problem. Your sense of being separate from God is your only problem. Not realizing you're connected to God is your only problem. Not knowing you're connected to Source is your only problem. The only problem is we believe we're separate. The only problem is we think we're separate from our Creator. The only problem is we think we're separate from God. The only problem is we think we're separate from God. The only problem in your life is you think you're separate from love. The only problem in your life is you think you're separate from love. The only problem in your life, the thing that's behind what you think of as every problem in your life is nothing but the belief that you're separate from love. The belief that you're separate from love is the only problem. Believing that you're separate from God is the only problem. Believing that you're separate from God is the only problem. Believing that you're separate from God is the only problem. Believing that I'm separate from my Creator is my only problem. Believing that I'm separate from my Creator is my only problem. Thinking that I'm separate from God is my only problem. Thinking that I'm alone is my only problem. Thinking that you're separate from God is the only problem. The only problem is believing that you're separate from God. That's the only problem. And it's already been solved. Yet the solution isn't recognized because the problem isn't recognized. The problem you're having with your boss is that you feel like you're separate from God. The problem you're having with your spouse is you believe you're separate from God. The problem you're having on your job, you believe you're separate from God. Your health problem is the belief that you're separate from God. Your financial problem is the belief that you're separate from God. The problem that you're having with your children is the belief you're separate from God. Every single solitary problem that you have on any level, Earl, every problem that you think you have, every one of them is because you think you're separate from God. You think you're not connected to your Creator. You think you're on your own. You think you're self-sufficient, and you think it's up to you to do it all on your own. That is the only problem with your life, is that you've been handling it. According to this. So I'm just telling you what it's saying, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to believe me. I don't care. I don't care if you believe me or not.
About addiction.
It's your belief that you're separate from God. If you knew your connection to Source, if you knew your connection to love, if you knew you were innocent, if you knew you were divine, then you wouldn't try to give yourself the addiction to give you the guilt that the addiction gives you because you believe you deserve to be punished, and so the guilt is your way of punishing yourself. Mm-hmm. So the addiction is all about your desire to feel guilty. That's where your addiction is coming from. Your desire to feel guilty. Your desire to feel guilty is behind any addiction. Is the desire to punish oneself. Mm-hmm. The minute you see it as truly innocent, but you can't be kidding around, you see it as truly innocent, you will no longer be addicted to it. Whatever it is. Don't care what it is. It could be anything. The minute you feel innocent, you will not be addicted. The guiltier you are, the longer you're going to do it.
Oh boy.
You're driven by something until you know you can have it all the time. You're driven by something until you know you can have it all the time. That's why some people who've been together for a long time not driven to have sex. Because they think they can have it all the time. This person is kind of available. This is your personal sex body. Okay.
You get tired of it,
don't you? It's like same thing about food. Same thing. Same exact thing. If you can have it all you want, as much as you want, then you'll be very patient about when you eat. It's only when you're uncertain of the outcome, you don't think you have it, you don't know the next time you're going to have it, that you get all uptight about it. So, I'll say this again. The problem is not recognized. Since the problem isn't recognized, the solution isn't recognized. So most people are trying to solve their problems through not going to God, not going to Source, because they don't recognize that that's the problem. Everyone in this world seems to have their own special problems. Yet all these special problems are all the same. And all these special problems must be recognized as one if the one solution that solves them all is to be accepted. So if I want the one solution that's going to solve all my problems, then I should start saying that all problems are the same. All problems are the same. All my problems are the same. All my problems are the same. All my problems are the same problem. All my problems are the same. So if I want to get the answer to the problem that I think I have right now, then I have to start saying all problems are the same. All problems are the same. I can't say I got a financial problem, I got a job problem, I got a health problem, I got a boss problem. If you keep defining your problems as many different problems, they will not be able to be solved.
Correct.
Is there anybody that doesn't hear that or don't understand what I just said?
Correct.
As long as you see your problems as many problems, the Course says they will not be solved. I don't know how they could be more simpler for us to hear. I don't know how they could be simpler. If I'm saying I got a financial problem, a health problem, a mate problem, a child problem, a kidney problem, a stomach problem, then if I'm saying I have many different problems, it said right here in black and white, the problem cannot be solved. The one solution that solves my problems cannot be solved unless I recognize that all problems are one. All the communication is disturbing me. Please stop talking in the back. Thank you. It's kind of disturbing me back. People are looking back, wondering what's going on.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
Souls need to be saved here.
That's okay. You just got to do it quietly. Okay. Now, everyone in this world seems to have their own special problem, but all the problems are the same and must be recognized as the same if the one solution that solves them all is to be accepted. Who can see that a problem has been solved if they think the problem is something else? Who can see that a problem has been solved if they think the problem is something else? Because even if someone gives you the answer, you cannot see its relevance. So let me explain that, which is just restating it another way. If you think your problem is something other than your relationship with God not being intact in your perception, then you will not see the relevance of anything I've said since I've been standing up here. So if you think what I've said is not relevant, if you think the idea that separation is the only problem, it's not relevant, then we were just told it's because you think the problem is something that you think it is. So the answer that Spirit just gave us will seem to be irrelevant. Like, that don't make any sense. That doesn't have any impact on me. That doesn't mean anything to me. I think my problem is my brother Jesse borrowed $100 from me, and if you can tell me how I can get Jesse to give me the $100, then I'm all ears. Because that's what I think the problem is. It's what I think it is. So when Earl says that the Course says the only problem is that I think I'm separate from my Creator, it'll be, The problem is I need to get a hitman after Jesse. And then when they threaten Jesse and he come up with the $100, then we're wrecked. You understand what I'm saying? So if you don't see the relevance of an answer, it's because you've already decided that you know what the answer is. Not only that, God is the love in which I forgive myself. Okay.
Yes.
It's a good one. This is a good one. This is, got all the signs, don't it? Yeah, got all the signs. So all of us, cut it out.
Yes.
We're all co-creating new distractions.
Absolutely.
We're all creating it.
Yep.
Because this makes so much sense. If I think I know what the problem and the answer is, and I come to a class and they tell me that the answer is something else that I don't think it is, I'm not going to think the answer was meaningful or relevant. Because I've already decided what my problem is, even though it hasn't been solved. And the fact that it hasn't been solved is the proof I don't know what the problem is. So if I'm sitting up here and I still think I have a problem that I haven't been able to solve, does it mean that I do not have the slightest idea what the problem really is? Yes. And as long as I'm determined to believe I know what the problem is, then when Spirit does answer my prayer, and I could get out of it, I would not even hear it, because what I'm hearing is not relevant, because I've already decided that the answer is what I've decided it is, and the problem is what I've decided it is. So if any of us are sitting up here with any pattern or situation or circumstance that we have not been able to solve, it means that we already think we know what the problem is, and we already think we know what the answer is. And since we haven't heard what we believe the problem and the answer is, we say, I don't see the relevance, I didn't hear the answer. Because what I'm looking for is my answer. I'm looking for Earl to say what I have begun to think that the problem is, instead of what the problem really is. Okay, I'm going to cover a bit, and then I'm going to open up for questions. Okay, so that way we'll cover some material, then we'll do some questions, and we'll cover some more material. Okay, so that's the position that you find yourself now. That's the position in which you find yourself now. You have the answer, but you're still uncertain about what the problem is. You have the answer, but you're still not certain what the problem is. A long series of different problems seem to confront you. A long series of different problems seem to confront you. A long series of different problems seem to confront you. And as one problem is settled, the next problem and the next problem arise. As soon as you solve one problem, then another problem comes up. As soon as you solve that problem, then another problem. You get your financial situation solved, then all of a sudden you're fired. And then you get another job, and then they tell you got 6 months to live. Then you go get this. You go to the doctor, and then he says you know they're wrong. You got some more time to live, and then you go home, and then you find out that somebody broke in your house. You know, after that, it's like as long as you. He says there's one thing after another thing after another thing. Has that been anyone else's experience of being here other than me? That there seems to be no end to the stuff that you got to deal with. And have you noticed that your mind always tells you as soon as this one is solved, everything will be okay. This, whatever the latest one is, that's the one. If you can get that handled, you're going to finally let yourself feel some joy. But you know what happens if you get that one handled in your perception, don't you? The next one comes up, right? And then he says, there seems to be no end to them. It seems like there's no end to the problems. There is no time in which you feel completely free of problems and at peace. There are no times that you feel like everything is cool, everything is chill, everything is perfect, my finances are perfect, my relationship is perfect, my health is perfect, my looks are perfect, my breath is perfect. It's like there's no time that it looks like everything is perfect, everything is great. Is this book telling the truth? Okay, and then it says right after that, that's the position that you find yourself in now. That you have the answer, but you're not certain what the answer is, and you're dealing with one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing, and that you never feel like everything is completely perfect, fine, okay. He says the temptation to regard problems as many is the temptation to keep the problem of separation unsolved. I will say that over and over again until I hear it. I don't want to solve my problem, which is my sense of separation from the universe, source, God, and you. I don't want to deal with my real problem being my sense of separation from you, me, love, my creator, my relationship with my source. I don't want to deal with that. So the way that I keep from dealing with the real solution is I'm going to keep saying I have a whole lot of problems that need to be solved. So anybody that's telling you that they have a whole lot of problems that need to be solved, this is a person who's trying to avoid having their problem solved. So anybody that tells you they have a lot of problems, that the Course is saying that's somebody who's trying to avoid healing their relationship with God. This is a person that's still not ready to deal with the issue of their connection with Source, their connection with love. So if you got a whole lot of problems, say I'm just trying to avoid the answer. Right now, because I got so many problems. I can't even see the answer. I got to avoid the answer because I have so many problems. So remember the next time you're saying you have a lot of problems that you're trying to avoid the solution, which is to heal your sense of separation from God, source, love, whatever that word is that works for you. I like the word God because it's the one I got the biggest hang-ups about. So if I want to grow, I've got to go past whatever it is that I use to block myself and not avoid it. You know what I'm saying? So if God is a word you have a problem with, it might be a good one for you to use, just so you can get past your challenges around it. If the word Jesus makes your skin crawl, then you might want to try giving it a new perception, a new interpretation. Because you believe something and I believe something, it doesn't make it true. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true, and just because you feel something doesn't make it true either. But it is the truth about how you feel. But it may not be the truth about whatever you're feeling it about. Like if you tell me you feel angry, I'm not going to argue with that. But what you feel angry about may not be real, may not be true. Does that make sense to everybody? So your feelings are always right. Your feelings are always telling you the truth. But whether or not your feelings are based on fact is a whole different thing. All right. And I want my brother, what's your name?
Joseph.
Hey, Joseph. I want you to know, man, that you're completely, totally, 100% welcome. And I'm glad you're here.
I met this gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
He told me to come over here.
Yeah,
And,
right. And I want you to know you're welcome, and I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I want you to know that. See, because you
And
can
I don't
really-
call too many people sir.
Well, I've been called worse.
Except from my dad.
I've worked up to sir.
All right.
A few weeks ago,
Sir
I was
with love.
an N-word. I worked from N-word to sir. In just a few weeks, I have unbelievable spiritual progress that is being made. I'm Sir Ian. Thanks a lot. I have this one problem. That's separation from God.
Boy, when you get to the point that as soon as you think you have a problem, that's the first thing you say, you know you're getting it. As soon as you have a problem, first you go, I'm feeling like I'm separate from God right now. My boss is tripping. I'm tripping on my boss this morning. I think I'm separated from God right now. I'm wondering how I'm going to pay this bill. I must think I'm separate from God right now. I'm feeling lonely. I wish somebody would love me, but nobody loves me. I must be feeling separate from God right now. My back is hurting. I must be feeling separate from God right now.
Thank you.
You know, I'm mad. I must be feeling separate. When we get to the point that we go straight to that, then we're on the way to breakthrough and enlightenment. And also all about so-called problems being solved, which to me is a good deal. First of all, I like the idea that I went from many problems to one. That should be worth the price of admission right there. The fact that you started, when you came in here, you had many problems, now you just got one. Y'all be glad about that? I know. If you accept that, there's less things that you can use to avoid the real problem. I know you're getting solved. I know. You need a lot of problems to avoid dealing with the real issue, and I just reduced it to one. That's just one before you have to deal with the truth. Okay. The truth is, you are friggin' loved. The truth is, you are unlimited in your power. The truth is, you are innocent. The truth is, you are a creator. The truth is, you are divine. The truth is, you are unlimited. That's the truth about you. And that's the truth we're trying to avoid.
Amen.
Isn't that a truth? That's the truth we're trying to avoid. The truth of how loving and beautiful and innocent we are. Because people tend to be more suspicious of someone who says something loving to them than someone who says something derogatory and critical. I'm much more of a threat by saying you're innocent, sinless, and guiltless than I would be if I was saying that, you know, you were sinful and you were guilty and you were bad and you needed to repent. It would be like, well, you're telling the truth, but that's what happened. When he talk about that innocent, unlimited stuff, he must be the devil in the glory of the angel. Anybody that will see me that way must be a con man. Somebody tell me I deserve to be happy, he's trying to get my money. Which, by the way, is one of my problems. Because I think I'm separate from God. Okay, a question before I go further. You then you.
Why don't we want to deal with that problem?
Because if we deal with that problem, then we have to take total responsibility for our entire experience, let more abundance in than we think we deserve, and generally love everybody and everything. And we're trying to get to the cleaners. If I believe I don't deserve love, then I'm going to avoid anything that would make that not be true. You see, if I believe that humility is self-debasement, if I think that being spiritual means always putting myself down and sacrificing, and then here's somebody telling me that I'm unlimited and I'm powerful, that's a total affront to my reality as I have set it up. And my whole identity is connected with the way I see myself. So when you come to classes like this, sometimes the resistance comes up because your whole identity feels threatened. Because what you're hearing can be so different from what you believe about yourself. That to accept it, you would have to invert your whole frame of reference in the way that you deal with everything in your life. So it's easier to just deal with the problem, I think, than for me to change my mind about everything. You see, so we avoid it because we want to keep things the way they are, and we think there's some type of a payoff in keeping it the way it is. And you don't even have to know what the payoff is, but whatever it is you haven't been able to change, there's a payoff in that. And then the book just told us what the payoff is. It's my way of avoiding the real issue, which is my spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. See, I'm avoiding my spiritual growth. I'm avoiding my spiritual life. That's deep. Yes, Dominic.
If I'm willing to accept that my only problem is my separation from God, and I practice that, and I remember that in situations, and I still appear to have problems, not, a huge amount, but okay, so I still have problems. Is it because I haven't done it enough yet, or is it because I have too much doubt and I don't really believe it yet?
Well, what you're doing is you're not allowing yourself to have gradual progress.
Okay.
Because you're accepting that it's true more and more and more and more, so therefore you seem to perceive your problems being solved more and more and more and more. So the reason why you don't see it all at once is because you're not doing it all at once. So you're just seeing a reflection of the level you are doing it at. And so the way to achieve it is to constantly repeat it, and it's the repetition that the ego mind doesn't want to do. The ego mind wants you to give 100 different answers for 100 different questions. But the way that you steal the ego is to take whatever is happening in your life and apply the same answer to it. And that will completely undo your ego, which is your fear. So for me to say, looks like I'm having a problem with my banker, and I need to get some things straightened out with my banker, but the truth is I'm feeling totally separate from God. That my real problem is that I feel separate from God. Now I'll call the loan officer and I'll ask what would be the best thing for us to do right now. Mm-hmm. So it's not saying you wouldn't go out in the world and handle what you think you need to handle in the world. You just wouldn't do it before you told yourself the truth and then ask for guidance about the best way to handle it. Does that make sense to everybody? It's like the minute I say I think I'm separate from God is my problem. But then if I feel like I need to go to the doctor and get a checkup, I still go to the doctor and get a checkup, but I still know that ultimately the problem is I think I've lost sight of my connection with the power that heals all things. That way you won't be, your ego won't get you. So still do what you're going to do, but only after you tell yourself the truth. I have one problem, and that problem is taking the form of the health problem I'm dealing with right now. I have but one problem. That problem is taking the form of my bank account being overdrawn. I have but one problem, my sense of separation from God. That problem has been solved, and I just won $1 million in the lottery. That still is a result of your sense of feeling separate from God. If you believe that that would be what would really make you happy, if you believe that that's really where your fulfillment comes from, then even if you won the lottery, you still would have a problem. Because you still think you are being taken care of by something outside of your own relationship to source. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
What if you think you're separate for a higher purpose?
There's not really. That wouldn't be true within the context that what we're talking about right now. Like you separating yourself long enough to meditate so that you can grow spiritually is not true separation. Actually, that's joining. Because it's your purpose that determines the meaning. So if I'm separating from you so that, let's say you and I have an argument and I separate from you so that I can get my perception corrected, then I separated to heal, so I wasn't really separate from you. I'm really joined with you. I'm just getting back to get my ego in check. Okay? So separating to heal isn't really separating. Okay, somebody else. Take the hand up.
How come your family hurts you the worst, especially when your loved ones die?
Well, the first thing to remember is that nobody is really hurting you. It's the meaning that you're giving to it that's hurting you. It's the meaning that you're giving to your family that's hurting you. It's the meaning that you're giving to someone dying that's hurting you. So it's never anybody or anything really hurting us. It's the way we're looking at it that's hurting us. So that's what's really hurting you, or making you feel good.
That's enough said.
You know, which is really a trip though, because you'll be with somebody and you swear they're making you feel good. And the truth is you're just giving them a meaning that makes you feel good when you're with them. Because if you really like somebody, they don't have to do nothing. You just kind of goo-goo because you're just sitting over there buying. You know what I'm saying? You just can't hardly control yourself. And they're like looking at a commercial on TV and you in the house. Why? Because they're giving you a meaning that's turning them on. And they can also take that meaning away. And don't you forget that. They can give it and they can take it away. Because we forget that in relationships. We kind of act like, oh my God, it's just guaranteed that they're going to always be feeling this. Well, they can take it back. If you don't realize your only problem is your sense of separation from God. Right? Okay, so let me go on. I'm going to go through this. This is a deep section, isn't it? It says, okay, here you go. It says, the temptation to regard problems as many is the temptation to keep the problem of separation unsolved. The world seems to present you with a vast number of problems, each problem requiring a different answer. The world, you could say your life, seems to present you with a vast number of problems, each requiring a different answer. Is that a perception? That's just the way you're looking at it, right? He says, well, this perception places you in a position in which your problem solving must be inadequate and failure is inevitable. So he's saying it to us again. If you use the perception that your world is presenting you with a vast number of problems, each requiring a different answer, you have just put yourself in the position that you're going to fail to solve your problem. So notice it just said the same thing, it just said it a different way.
Thank you.
Okay, so whenever you use the perception, I got a lot of stuff I got to deal with today. You are placing, notice he says this perception places you in a position. It's almost if you can just visualize it. I believe I've got a vast, this is me. I believe I've got a vast number of problems, each requiring a different answer. Okay, this is me. He says this perception that I got a lot of problems that need to be solved, it will place me in a position where none of my problems can be solved. So your perceptions move you into positions. Is that right? And so the Course says every time you say you have a bunch of problems, you have just placed yourself into a position that you're going to fail in your perception to solve any problems you think you have. Woo, that's deep. But then but it really explains why it looks like problems aren't being solved, because most of the people we know, including ourselves, do look at it as if there's a vast number of problems that's being presented in the world that we have to have a vast number of answers. The average person is going to say that's the case, and he's saying, well, that's the reason why none of y'all's problems are being solved. So that is the reason why none of your problems are being solved, because you think you got a whole lot of them. And so if you think you have a whole lot of them, you will have a whole lot of them. I got a whole lot of problems. I got a whole lot of problems. That's what Spirit is telling us. If you create your reality through your own thinking, and you're walking around thinking that you have an endless series of problems that always need to be solved, you're going to have an endless series of problems that always need to be solved. So if you walked out of here today and I walked out of here today and we said we have one problem and that problem has already been solved, then we are automatically putting ourselves in a state of mind where what? We have one problem that's already been solved, because everything is going to be a reflection of your belief system. Everything is going to be a reflection of your perception. So if you just tell yourself you have one problem, you'll still be moving toward a healing of many problems. If you just walk out of here today and you just say, I have one problem, 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 I just have one problem, I just have one problem. Or you have a friend that says back to you when you say you got a lot of problems, and they would be conscious enough to say, oh, the one problem of being separate from God right now is taking the form of your having to go over to the school to talk to your son's teacher. That's the way we'll be talking one day. Your sense of being separate from God is taking the form right now. Maybe you need to go to the doctor and get checked out for what's going on in your leg. So you're going to always tell the truth first, then deal with the illusion. But tell yourself the truth first, that I have one problem and it's already been solved. And right now it's still appearing like I've got this physical thing I'm dealing with right now. Any questions about that? Yes.
So once you have that clear perception, does your one problem that you're separate from God heal automatically, or do you still?
The ones you recognize that you only have one problem, that's your sense of separation from God, at that point, you're in the state of mind that you can start receiving guidance from the universe about what it is you need to do to let go of that sense of separation from God. Because I'm not going to hear the answer as long as I think the answer is something else. So even if Spirit is telling me how to heal, I won't hear it because I think it's something else other than I need to heal my sense of separation from God. So the ones you make the decision that you only have one problem and that you're separate from God, at that point the universe will start to do everything to teach you how to let go of that block so that your problem is solved and you can see that it's solved. Because what good is it being solved if I can't see it? So if I can't see it but it's been solved, it means I'm having some kind of a block to seeing it. So I need the block to seeing that my problems have been solved removed. How do I know I have a block? Because I think I still have problems. And if you think you still have problems, you know you're blocked. What is my ego? My ego is the part of me that thinks it already knows what the problem is and how it should be solved, so it is not interested in hearing what you got to say, brother. Matter of fact, it's hard to even stay awake to hear what you got to say because you're not saying what I think the problem is. So when you hear the answer, it has no relevance. But if you love yourself, you go, shoot, I want to buy into the whole idea that I just got one problem. And I want to buy into the idea that it's already been solved. I think that's the idea I want to buy into. Why? That's the brother or sister that you know has suffered enough. And so they're ready to be happy now. Those who have not suffered enough, then they still want to defer to their own egotistical perceptions of what's going on because they are control freaks and need to be in charge. And they're cute. Okay, so
I'm not cute, damn it.
Well, you could be very cute and not even be aware of how cute you are.
Oh.
It's solved, but I got a lifetime of practice coming up, don't I?
It's a matter of motivation, according to the Course. That how long it takes you to experience the truth is in direct proportion to your willingness to accept it. So if I was willing to accept it today, then I could be enlightened today. If I was willing to accept peace and love and abundance today, I could have it anytime I want it. He says it only takes an instance to give us an answer, but it may take us lifetimes before we're ready to accept it. And that's why you don't have to stick around until somebody accepts it. You know, so it's not like I'm going to share this with you and then I'm going to go home with you today to make sure you do what I said. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you decide, he says you'll always use a solution when you recognize the solution will help you and not hurt you. So when people delay in using answers, it means some part of their mind still thinks they're going to lose if they do what they're being told. So why wouldn't I jump on it immediately if I really thought it worked and I really wanted the healing? Well, it's because I still am addicted to being right more than I am to being happy. I still want it to be the way I think it is rather than be the way it is, which means I'm telling the universe I still want to continue to suffer just a little while longer. And since the universe always says yes, then you get a chance to suffer as long as you would like to suffer. Isn't that wonderful? That nothing will interfere with your suffering as long as you want to do it. You're in a world where people can like watch you suffer and don't care. It's called Earth. That's why we can hear about millions of people starving and don't do nothing about it. We're in a place where people don't care. How did I get here?
Yeah, that's right.
Being as caring as I am, I know I'm here to help everybody else. That's why I'm here, because I care about everybody.
You know, everybody tell you they care about
One more
everybody.
question.
They care about everybody. Yes.
How come only the good die young?
That's another perception. That's another perception. There's some bad people that die young, and you be glad. Okay.
I'm gonna be 50, and I've done a lot of bad things, and I ran a lot of bars, and put it that way, and God still keeps me alive.
Isn't that a trip? I have too. I've done many things, and God keeps me alive. It looks like whatever it is that created us doesn't tend to care much about what we do either. We don't care about what nobody else does. It doesn't really seem like that which created us cares about what we do either, because it doesn't exactly outwardly interfere and grab you when you get ready to do something dumb and say don't do it. But you know why? Because that which created us knows that we can't do anything really to anything that's real. That we can't change anything that's real. We can only change what's not real. The fact that you are innocent and that you are loved, nothing can change that. When you don't think you are, then be glad that can change. So the only thing that changes is what is not love. The only thing that changes is what is not joy. So if you're sad, you're guaranteed that it's going to change, because that's not a reflection of love. And anything that's not a reflection of love is going to have to be changed until it is love. So I don't care how miserable your life may be in some area, it can't stay that way permanently, because nothing in the universe would allow painful situations to last forever, because the nature of the universe is love. So it's going to change. And if you don't change internally, the Course says what's going to happen is that you're going to have external things happen that's going to make you change, but the universe will not allow you to stay in a state of guilt and sadness and misery always, no matter how much a part of you might think you deserve to do it, and no matter how much a part of you might fight that idea, you're going to be healed. You're going to be. Now, one little caveat here is that according to this stuff, you're eternal, so you can take a couple of million years if you want to. Okay, you know, so if you want to be miserable, you can be miserable your whole life. If you believe in reincarnation, you can die and then come back miserable. Make yourself miserable more, and you die, and then come back. That would suck, and that is exactly why so many people sitting around going, "My life sucks." You know, it's like the 200th time they've had their story, and they know their story is so good, they're sick of their story. And the Course says, basically, by the time you get to the point that you're studying what it calls the final lesson, you have been in your ego so long, you've had it. You've done everything that you can do in your ego. You've had every physical pleasure experience possible to happen. You've already, if you're sitting up here, you old. And you have been in the physical realm a zillion times. Why do you think you're so depressed? And so when you feel depressed, why do you think people are depressed? They see where they at. When you're not letting yourself have what you want, he says depression is a normal reaction to wanting something that you think you can't have. And he says the only reason why you don't have it, happiness, is because you've made up what you think happiness is, and it's not really the thing that would make you happy. Instead of asking for happiness, you're asking for it your way. And he says if you would just start asking for happiness and removal of the blocks to happiness, you would watch your whole synchronicity of your life change. But the minute I define what my happiness is, then the same rule applies. Even if someone is revealing that answer to me, I won't hear it, because I've already decided that my happiness is what I think it is. So if the thing that would really make me happy could be standing right next to me, I wouldn't see it, because I've already made up my mind that my happiness is in this thing over here. So the same thing applies to happiness. You have to start to ask for happiness, more so than trying to come up with the form you think it's supposed to come to you in, so you can have it faster. Because the thing that we make up that's going to make us happy, in many cases, it is the thing that delays our happiness, because we're busy trying to make that thing happen and missing all the stuff that could be happening really, really easily if we would just let go of our incredible need to be in control of things that we don't even understand, which is really crazy. I want to control the unknown.
Never gonna happen.
You know, think about that. We who hardly can control ourselves should hardly aspire to control the universe. Okay. You know, it's like we're always, I'm going to create my reality. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you don't need to be in control of nothing. One of my favorite lines in this book is he says, "Resign now." I couldn't believe my eyes. He said, "Resign now,
as your own teacher. And what you will surely do as soon as you honestly assess the result of your own earnings.
And I'm like, you're right. If you look at it the way you've set it up, being in charge, he says you would be glad to resign. So, you know, just to walk into the room of your own self and go, I quit. All right. So you can finally get what you want, you know. Because everything is waiting for you to say you quit. Everything, the whole universe is like it's like a surprise birthday party. Everybody waiting for you to quit. You know what I'm saying? It's like we got some good stuff. As soon as he quits, as soon as he'll take his fantasy, you know. I didn't start having different experiences with women until I stopped trying to get them to act out my fantasies. Because if I wanted a woman to act out my fantasy, I had to keep throwing the same fantasy basically out there, recreating the same experience with every woman I would meet. And you can apply that to anything. That's the problem with your fantasies. Your fantasies actually keep everything in your life dull and routine because your imagination really isn't that great. So you basically keep coming up with the same thing, but with just a little slightly different little takes on it. But it's basically the same fantasy. And the Course says, here is the fantasy. I want to be special. Somebody is going to treat me special. I'm going to be special through my money. I'm going to be special through my fame. I'm going to be special through my misery. I'm going to be special through... But I'm going to be special, and you are going to be the one that helps me see I am special. And it's going to be a full-time freaking job. So I don't want you to even think about making nobody else special. Don't even think about talking to nobody else. I want you to make me special all the time. And if you don't, I'm not going to give you my dysfunctional love. I don't know how to love nobody. I can't even hardly say thank you to myself. But I'm looking for somebody to love. I got a lot of love for you, baby. No, baby, I got a lot of issues. That's what I got for you. You want some issues? You say you got many problems? Here I come. You want to avoid God? Here's my phone number. You want to make sure you always sad? Text me. And when we're really determined to be miserable, then we come back in as relatives. Because as relatives, we're guaranteed to be in each other's life for as long as one of us shall live. So as a relative, I can make you feel good from the time you were a little kid, and some of us have relatives like that. We can remember when we were little, old Uncle Jake, you know, he always liked me. And then you got to, my grandmother, bless her heart. My grandmother.
Thank you.
You're welcome, brother. My grandmother, bless her heart, because we had a different relationship at the end. She lived to be like 105 years old. And she was just like the Wicked Witch on the Wizard of Oz. She looked like the Wicked Witch on the Wizard of Oz and everything. So every time she always be like criticizing us, and we had to pass by our house before we could go to the store, and we could try to sneak past, like, just try not to on our grandmothers. See, most people have all those good stories about their grandmother, you know what I'm saying? Oh, grandmother, they just love their grandchildren. Every grandmother don't love their grandchildren. Just like every mother wasn't the greatest mother that ever lived. There's a lot of people on Mother's Day celebrating the death of their mother. Everybody not in love with their mama, right? So all I'm saying is that in the end, it's how we choose to see it. So I need to say the problem with my grandmother was I thought I was separate from God, and I thought I was separate from love. And then as I changed my mind and got into spiritual truth, my grandmother completely changed. She even loaned me some money. I like her now. I have a good grandmother. That's all it takes when a specialist. Just do my special thing. I'm right back in your corner. That's how you know it's not real, because I'm not there unless you're doing what I like. If you don't do what I like, I'm not going to give you my love. See, I want the real love, not that kind. So I want to recognize I only have one problem, and that problem has been what? Solved, and that's me thinking that I'm separate from God, and I need to stop saying I have a lot of problems and walk out here today and say I have one problem. Would you acknowledge yourself for hearing this much? So let's do the financial expression of appreciation, and I got a quick little thing I'm going to do at the end to bring this home. Thank you so much for sharing with me. I'm a full-time teacher of this stuff, so thank you so much. And those of you on the internet, thank you so much for your generosity. If you want to make a financial expression of appreciation, you can go to my website, earlpurdy.com. And also I'm available for clarity sessions, one-on-one sessions, where we take whatever it is you think you are dealing with in your life, and we give you another way to look at it, a way to get past it. If you're open to astrology and numerology, I use that also for those who are open to it. It's very helpful. Another way to get some information from truth. 7 o'clock on Tuesday night is the Way of Mastery. The Way of Mastery is also a very hardcore. Is that
No.
okay. It's a very hardcore truth, just like this is. We've been having a great class. It's been a trip. The Way of Mastery. Okay. I'm gonna finish this. Yeah.
Oh, poor baby.
I'm gonna hang it going in the alley. Okay. So here we go. This is very important. I couldn't let y'all get out of here without hearing this paragraph. No one can solve all the problems that the world seems to hold. I will repeat that. No one can solve all of the problems in this world. The problems in this world seem to be on so many levels in such varying forms and with such varied content that the problems in this world confront you with an impossible situation. Don't y'all see it's just the same thing over and over again? First it was Iraq. Now it's Syria. Then it's Afghanistan. Then it's Korea. Then that's what the course is trying to tell us. Don't y'all get it? That it's the same thing over and over and over and over again? That you've been having the same so-called problems over and over and over again. And so he's saying that dismay and depression are inevitable if, as you regard all these problems, you are going to feel depressed. So depression is a natural response to having so many problems on so many levels that it looks like it's impossible. If you feel depressed, that's normal. Then it goes on to say, I love this, some of your problems spring up unexpectedly. Just as you think you resolved the previous problem, then this other problem jumps up unexpectedly. And then he says, other of your problems remain unsolved under a cloud of denial. So you got a lot of problems that don't get solved because you're in denial about them. He says, and then they rise up to haunt you from time to time. So you got some problems that you're in denial about. He says that rises up to haunt you from time to time, and then the problems are hidden again and remain unsolved. So just when you think you got one problem solved, here comes something that you didn't even know that you were believing that was causing you a problem. He says all of this is great. He says all of this complexity, he says all of this complexity is just a desperate attempt not to recognize the problem and therefore to let the problem be resolved. So if you don't want to have your problem solved, you would say, I have very complex issues. So if you're a person who's real complex, then he would say you're a person who's attempted not to recognize the problem and let it be solved. So if you just got all these complex issues and complex problems, he's saying that if you could recognize that your only problem is separation, no matter what form it takes, no matter what appearance it takes, if you were to recognize your only problem is the sense of separation from source, you could accept the answer because you would see that the answer is relevant. Perceiving the underlying constancy of all the problems that seem to confront you, you would understand you have the means to solve all your problems, and you would use the means to solve all your problems. So right now we're going to try to free our minds from all the many different kinds of problems we think we have. Close your eyes, please. We're going to try to recognize that we only have one problem, and it was just a problem we didn't recognize. We're going to ask what the problem is. We're going to wait for the answer. We're going to be told. We will ask for the solution. We will be told. So this is going to be successful to the extent to which you don't insist on defining your problem. You will be successful to the extent that you don't insist on defining your problem. If you stop insisting on defining your problem, you will be successful. Perhaps you will not succeed in letting all your preconceived notions go. It's not necessary for you to let go of all your preconceived notions about what your problems are. It's not necessary for you to let go of all your preconceived notions about what your problems are. All that's necessary is for you to entertain some doubt about the reality of your version of what your problem is. So be willing to say, I might not be correct about what I think my problem is. It's a possibility I might not be correct about what I think my problem is. That's all you have to say. It's a possibility I might not be correct about what I think my problem is. Because you're trying to recognize the problem so that you can bring the problem and the answer together so you can let go of the problem. So you're going to see many problems come up today. And each one of the problems coming up are going to call for a different answer. So our efforts are going to be directed toward recognizing that there is only one problem and one answer. It's in that recognition that all your problems will be solved. When you say, I have one problem, I have one answer. So tell yourself, whenever difficulty comes up, whenever a difficulty seems to come up, tell yourself quickly as possible, whenever difficulty seems to come up, tell yourself, let me recognize this problem so this problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. So try to suspend all judgment about the problem is, about what the problem is. Try to suspend all judgment about what the problem is. And if possible, close your eyes. If possible, wherever you are, try to close your eyes for just a moment and ask what the problem is. You will be heard and you will be answered. So anytime any difficulty seems to come up today, the rest of this week, as quick as you can, tell yourself, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. What is the problem? Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. What is the problem? Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Y'all hear that? Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize. Let me recognize. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. You want to learn just one statement. If you just take this one statement and you work this one statement this coming week and you tell yourself, I have one problem, just one problem. There's one problem. My sense of separation from God, that's my one problem. My sense of separation from love is my one problem. Then you will be going a long way toward having all of your problems that you think you have healed in mysterious ways, in miraculous ways that will blow your mind. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for coming out so we can hear this and try to remember it together. So what that statement? Let me recognize the problem so the problem can be solved. As soon as the difficulty come up, I have one problem, there's one solution. The problem is just taking this particular form. It's just taking this appearance. But tell the truth about it first and you'll see miracles start to happen in your life. Incredible. Okay, appreciate y'all. We made it.